Welcome back to Mishpacha's Take 2, where you get to meet the personalities, the people we've profiled in the magazine, sit down with them in real life and invite them into your living rooms. Today's guest, Elchanan Schwarz, is a special pleasure for me. When you're writing a profile on somebody, so the gimmick, if you're a writer, you're always trying to say, you see this, we see something else. I'm going to tell you this story that maybe you don't see. There's always a little bit of mystique, an element of mystery in what we're trying to do. Elchanan Schwarz is one of the more, besides being a very fun profile, I always knew him as just a fun person. Funny guy, you see him in a room, everybody's always around him and laughing. And when we did the profile a number of years ago, we got to hear about a very deep and a very insightful and a very real part of him that maybe you don't see right away if you just know him from his sense of humor, from his role as Five-ish on the Ura videos. And the feedback to the article was overwhelming in the sense that people understood that things are nuanced, things are not always black and white, exactly as you see them. Elchanan Schwarz was a poster boy for that, so it's a pleasure to sit with you.
Nuance, love nuance. Yeah.
And you know it's true. You know you're a funny guy, right?
I don't know.
You know that people laugh when they see you and there's expectations.
I have a big following from ages like 5 to 9.
That's very special.
That's
very nice.
That's big.
How old are your oldest kids?
I do a lot of, my oldest is 11.
So, boy?
We're getting close. He's a boy, my 3 boys, and then we're getting to a point probably where they're going to be mortified of me.
You're Elchanan Schwarz's son. Oh. They're quiet.
They're gonna, they still think it's nice. We're probably getting close to that age.
You have a role,
but I know lots of therapists, so we can fix them up, straighten them out if they need.
You're a little bit of an anomaly in the film world, if I may say so. That, like I said, I knew you only tangentially as a funny guy, funny person. We had a lot of friends in common. Your voice notes were even before things were going viral in the film world. You were somehow always front row center in chats, and people were always sharing things from you. Imitations, jokes, ideas, insights. And then I got to meet you, and there was so much there, which is true for all people probably when you sit with them, but you're actually a therapist. You're in the field of self-help, of working with people, of working through issues. You see all kinds of things that aren't so funny. So I would love to know, let's go back to that. How do you reconcile the laughter in your life and the other side of it?
So the therapy is... you're right. You get to see a different thing. There's a great line from one of the big psychodynamic therapists. He says,
"Psychodynamic therapist."
Yeah, like that from that kvutza of people. That it's a theory, a theoretical orientation for modality. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So he says he wrote a book to like the future therapists, and he talks about like the pros and cons of the job. And one of those things that he lists as a pro to the job, like what's a benefit of being a therapist, is that you get like a backstage pass to life. You get to see like behind the curtains. When you walk around, you see everybody.
That's amazing, because one of the things, forgive me for making you uncomfortable, you nail it. Your ability to call things in the film world as you see them, you're very astute. You say in just a few words, you're able to gauge a situation, usually able to find the funny element within it and say it in a sentence, which is essentially a backstage pass to from life.
I always thought, I remember reading, I forgot reading, like maybe like Dave Barry, and who was the guy who wrote the book, All I Need to Know, I Learned in Kindergarten. I remember that was like popular. Those were 2 books that were floating around the BMG dorm when I was there. And what I noticed is that the difference between... And
anybody who knows you spent a lot of years in dormitories in your life, like a decade.
Yeah, I really liked it there. It was great for me. And the difference between a comedian making observation and a philosopher or a psychologist, you just take it to the next step. The comedian just points out the discrepancy. He just points out the problem, the anomaly, that something's bizarre here. And then he just kind of leaves it. But the therapist kind of says, okay, now what's takap shot in that? And saps all the humor out of it and turns it into like a thing. But I always notice it's just one step further.
Do your patients appreciate humor when someone's sitting with you and talking about something real that they're dealing with?
I'm not so funny, and I mean I try. It's not. I'm not so funny in the room, I guess, as a therapist. I love the schmoozing of it. Like it's a lot of, at the end of the day, you're sitting down, you're talking to someone.
Now you work both in private practice and you work at Bina.
Right. So I do crisis counseling for Bina, which is
a
nonprofit that helps people with traumatic brain injury and stroke. So I do kind of crisis counseling for family members, sometimes for the person themselves. Mm-hmm. That's what I do most of the time, and then I have a private practice in Brooklyn and Lakewood as well.
Oh wow, very nice. I wanted to just mention something else that came up, but that's how we roll over here. You were an older single.
Yeah,
for,
sure.
For a while, you were an older single.
Yeah.
Older singles is a common demographic in the film community. There are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, that's the nature of our community and its growth and the explosion that happened. Not everybody gets married at 18, and not every boy is 21 and it's his first girl.
And a tragedy it is, yes.
And a tragedy it is.
Yeah.
And a boon to Haredi media, which has endless fodder. Anything about shidduchim in general goes for weeks. Yeah. Now we have weeks worth of letters in the magazine. Somebody wrote an article about. Actually, I'm going to ask you about that because you're a therapist and you're an older single. Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg in Florida wrote a cover story for us about 6 weeks ago. The letters haven't stopped, and he was saying that we're totally messed up in how we check people out for shidduchim. You asked the same. This was his example. I loved it. He says, "Yeah, you have a kid who's in 10th grade, 11th grade, a little jumpy. They have a strain of anxiety, OCD, ADHD, whatever it is, which is fairly common." Very common, and they deal with it. They go to the parents and they say, "I feel like maybe I'm sadder than jumpier than I need to be, more nervous than I need to be." They go to a mental health professional and maybe using a prescription drug, they get it helped, and then they function beautifully. Then you have the guy who never mentioned it. The parents said, "No, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just tired. You didn't eat supper well." Who's a better candidate to marry your child off to? Obviously the first child, because the first one is more functional. You're going to ask the rabbi, they'll say there is something. They went to a therapist, boom. You're running away from the shidduch. He says, you're an idiot. He didn't use that word. But he says, what are you doing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, own the problem, if you as opposed to, but who's going to do a quote unquote better shidduch, So the second person might do a better shidduch. First person first person will have a better marriage, So what do you want? Do you want to do a better shidduch or you want to have a better marriage?
Do you look at the situation of older singles today, and I assume you're still in touch with people who are not married? Okay. Yeah. And do you feel like it's harder today or easier today than it was? What are you married?
Married 12 years. It got to be harder. You got to figure it's harder. Everything's harder now.
And what would be your
COVID
message?
And everything?
What with COVID?
What
would be your message to older singles?
What would be my message to older singles? I don't know. Hang in there. Relax. It'll happen. Deal with issues if you have them. Try and deal with it.
You were famously. I don't know what was going on inside your heart, but you made a big point out of being that guy who laughs his way through it. And there was a point in your life, I think in Toronto, where you were hanging out with kids who were 18 or 19 and working with them, and you were 25, 26, whatever you were. Yeah. It's not ideal. It's not in terms of your social interaction that a person needs to thrive. It's not ideal, but you made it work.
Yeah, whatever. I didn't have much of a choice, like most people. When people make things work, it's usually because they have to make them work. So
where did that come from? Who inspired you? Where did you get the
inspiration? Yeah. My cousin, my uncle, the people that I was with in Toronto. I had great friends and people. Some of them, in Toronto, great people to work with. Rabbi Breidowitz, to work for Rabbi Breidowitz. All these people is great stuff. It's great stuff.
Tell me the story about Rabbi Breidowitz. You once told me the story why you made him Masada Kedushin at your wedding. I found that
because he fired me. You love that story. Why do you bring it up every time we speak?
It's a great story.
He told me I was single. I was in Toronto. I couldn't date a lot in Toronto. At the end of the day, I was doing good work there, but every time I wanted to date, most of the time I had to go back to Brooklyn, to Tri-State.
Yeah, you're bringing us back to an era where you could actually leave Canada and come back to Canada.
Yes.
Different time. So some of our viewers may not know that there was a time that you could go across the border, right?
Yeah, so not anymore. But in those days, you could still travel. He said, it's not conducive, and I didn't. I was too lazy to.
And you like teaching, so you said, I'm staying here and I'll do
it.
Whatever.
It kind of petered out. He's like, listen, he says, I feel like I'm enabling you, So that was that, and then I got engaged. Of course,
but you picked up your bag.
I was disappointed. I was furious. Fuming.
You're firing me because you want me to get married? What is that?
Yeah. Now you too. Everybody else wants me to get married. Now you also. But I was engaged. A year later. So I guess it worked.
And you made him, and he was Masada Kedushin.
And he was Masada Kedushin on the way.
I think it's a great story.
Yeah.
You understand why it's a great story?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. That's with all the singles. Back to you. So you're sitting in Bina. You do private practice.
Private practice.
Do you specialize in anything in your private practice?
I do a lot of adjustment-related stuff.
Explain.
Like life. I do a lot of teenagers, but a lot of people that are dealing with difficult circumstances in life, I would say, or transitioning to different older singles, 23-year-old to 30-year-old guys that are kind of figuring out what to do next in life.
The frum world has
children of
a
divorce,
problem.
illness, grief, all those kind of things.
Adjusting to that new reality.
Yeah, or going through kind of
this
life.
past
life
year must have been
circumstances.
very, very difficult.
It was very interesting, and a lot of anxiety in general. A lot of anxiety and that kind of stuff. Also, anxiety, grief, things like that. Past year was very interesting, and I think most therapists will tell you that from like March 2020, pretty much wiped out people's private practices, which was a fascinating phenomenon.
Because no one would come in.
Yeah, no one was coming in, and just, I don't know if it's just that no one was coming, like no one somehow needed mental help for a couple of months there. Everybody, I know that maybe the private organizations, or maybe the free, or maybe it was a money thing, maybe it was,
and they functioned.
Apparently, I mean, now it's booming.
So, but how do you understand that? March, April, May, June, nobody came in and they were okay.
Everybody,
or they weren't okay. They just couldn't get out.
No, I think that you were kind of mandated to sit at home and and just chill. So everybody sat at home and chilled. There was no conflict really.
You moved your practice to Zoom, or you do it?
I did, but even then, it was not. From what I understand, for those couple months when everybody was in quarantine and everybody assumed that everybody was losing their minds, people were doing okay. Surprisingly, maybe people were home. Maybe
in the frum world. I don't think it was like that.
In the private practice of the frum world.
I got you. How do you understand that a therapist-client relationship should work on Zoom as effectively as in real life? Or that means, is that a question on you, the fact that you're able to do it on Zoom? Or really was a bit the average? It shouldn't have been that way. And you made it work.
I have clients that I always saw on Zoom, and it's not bad.
Really?
It's not bad. I like, ideally, even if you're going to meet someone on Zoom, let him come in, let you meet personally a couple times. It is surprisingly... you would think, like I still think that, like, it shouldn't work as well on Zoom as it does in
I can't interview people on Zoom. There's just no flow. It doesn't work. I'm not able to connect.
Somehow it seems to be okay.
You're able to do that.
It's not. I would, if I had a choice, I would prefer to do it in person.
If we're talking about the last 12 months, we're talking about the COVID era.
Yeah.
Made and speedily in our days recover. You saw a lot.
What COVID? What COVID? I'll tell you on my side. I spoke
straight from Lakewood.
Elchanan Schwarz.
Yeah.
I spoke Motzei Shabbos by a shul thing, and one of the things I was saying was how the Rav kind of guided the Olam through COVID. I said for those who had COVID. I'm saying for those who was a thing. I remember years ago I was learning in Fallsburg, and everybody missed Shir on Friday. It was a big Olam missed Shir on Friday, and Rabbi Bell was not happy. And
Rabbi Bell is Yeshivish South Fallsburg.
Yeshivish South Fallsburg, right? So he was not happy. So he came in on Monday. And he was giving share on Monday, and he said like a big yisaid, and he said a big yisaid, and he said, "Und lefi di yisaid kann man yashiv sein, was man gesagt, wird gefragt Freitag beim Shir." According to that, we can answer what we asked Friday beim Shir. Das ist für die, was gewinnt auf Freitag. Für die, was nicht gewinnt auf Freitag, kann man nicht gewinnen schwer. Right? So it's like, so I was saying, the Rav led the Olam through COVID. For those for whom it was. For those who never had a problem, it was... I
have a side question.
I like saying that because it's one of the few things I could say over for a Rabbi.
That you understood.
That I understood.
You got the whole part.
Yeah.
You just imitated one of the Kedai Rosh Yeshiva in America, a tzaddik, a Gaon, and a Kaddish.
Yeah.
And you're able to do something that nobody else can do. Most people, if I was sitting across from somebody imitating Rosh Yeshiva, I would look at him in horror. And you have this ability. Okay, let me take a step back. There's a lot of people who are from comedians, quote unquote, on social media, other places. That means they're inside the community. So if when you're inside, you're able to mock, right? Everybody knows that. Then you have license to be able to make the jokes about kapara shlagan and shal chodos and stuff. And I find them not funny. That means this is just me. I have no data. This is completely informal, based on this really best instinct and reaction. Doesn't make me laugh. You're funny, and you're from the few people who are inside, and you're able to do it in a way. Maybe because you essentially respect the system and the people, and there's real reverence as you show in the other things you do in your day. And maybe you just know how to, first of all, do you disagree with me that there's not a lot of funny from professionals? People who are trying to be funny?
I think I like funny people. I think there's funny
you
people out there.
Some people are funny, who make you laugh. People send you things and you laugh?
Yeah, sometimes. I'm happy to let everybody do their thing.
I have a friend, Rabbi David Bashevkin, who wrote a book.
I know him very well.
Right, so,
we were in Toronto together for his mom, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, he came to learn that. He's funny.
And he believes it's an Avaida. That means he sources it in Chazal, the Avaida, and more power to him.
That'll kill any joke, though. The makar for my joke is a medrash rabbah.
Not the makar for the joke. The makar for the idea of telling jokes, especially over the last year. As a source of comfort, as a source of chizuk, as a source of whatever it is. So he takes it very seriously. He happens to be funny. He doesn't.
Rav Hirsch very into it. Rav Hirsch, seriously.
Schleik.
No, I think he says by Hamibli and Kfarim b'Mitzrayim, when the Klaisol told Moshe Rabbeinu Hamibli and Kfarim b'Mitzrayim, he's like, what are they saying? What are they saying?
Right. So it sounds like a cynical thing to say. Like
he said, they came over. They're like Moshe, Hamibli and Kfarim b'Mitzrayim, like this Jewish sarcasm, that got us through 2,000 years. I believe it's
all pseudo from intellectuals drop Rav Hirsch. That's why I'm wondering. But you're saying this is
what I heard. If I was really trying to drop,
would you imitate Rabbi Wachtweigel in front of Rabbi Wachtweigel?
Not Rabbi Fair. No.
Have you ever imitated?
He doesn't have such great memories of me. Someone who was like,
Who would you imitate in front of them, or who have you imitated? You're very good at it.
Who have I imitated?
One second, is there a chachma to imitating, or it's just instinct? Either you have it or you don't. Is there something?
I think it comes from like having a lot of listening to people just a lot, and then eventually, like I grew up with my mother was a history teacher, so she was constantly preparing history class and listening to Barrel Wine. So by the time I was like 14, 15, I was like, the story of the Jewish people in 1876, before the advent of Eli Whitney and the cotton gin, whatever.
Did you ever do it in front of Rabbi Wine?
He seems like he can handle it. Yeah. So
Did you ever? You once told me a story about imitating Rabbi Levin. That's all. Rabbi Chaim Levin on the mic in camp, and he came and.
No, I was imitating Rav Gifter on the mic.
Sorry,
camp.
Could you tell us the story?
And I was imitating Rav Gifter on the mic, and someone came running to the office.
Rav Gifter was already deceased.
That was a year or two before.
What was the imitation? Share it.
No, I can't. I don't want to. You're gonna get. I'm gonna get hate mail.
No, you won't.
Yeah,
you won't. And it's
from Rav Gifter. He was a tremendous orator. So he was.
When you imitate Adam Gadol, it brings. I think the Talmidim connect. You're doing something for them.
I think most people. I would say 99% of people they're like.
I have a friend. His name is Ezzy Wartelski. He's a talented imitator, and he went to the Shiva for Rabbi Trank, and he imitated Rabbi Trank to the kids, and they loved it. They appreciated what he was doing, because that was his way of reconstructing something.
There's always that one guy without a sense of humor, though. Right. There's always totally. You grew up in Cleveland, so you probably met one or two of them. Cleveland's actually pretty. I find Cleveland's pretty laid back on this kind of stuff. That's what I had thought.
People from Cleveland are funny.
I find that a lot of my Cleveland friends are very talented. Yeah,
I didn't say talented. I said funny.
Funny, yeah, funny, talented, whatnot. Not good at the stock market or anything like that. Or they're good at they're humorous, big sports fans usually, and you do a lot of housing rehabs. That's.
We should talk about that, out of town. This is a thing we talk about a lot in the magazine and in real life. I live out of town as well. You're a product out of town, but you live in Lakewood.
Right.
That means you made a decision that there's something about wholesome, about out of town, chinuch, raising a family, but you didn't do that with your own family.
Yeah.
Because?
I don't know. Where am I going? Where's my wife? My wife's from Brooklyn, first of all. So there's a limit to when we got married, she thought that Cleveland was. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to, fly 4 hours every time I want to see my parents. It wasn't a thing for her. She really did, grow up, and there's in her map of the United States is Brooklyn, Borough Park, Williamsburg, Muncie, and then on the western seaboard is Cleveland, Chicago, Detroit. Like when you're a kid and you think that, Eretz Yisrael looks like, there's the Kaisel, and then down the block is Brisk, and then around the corner is Kavarachel,
and then the Uris.
And Uris and Adar Gula, of course.
Right, got it. Okay, so take a step back. Rav Gifter. So you're imitating Rav Gifter on the mic, and somebody tells you,
the Yeshiva's here, and this and that. But he turned out he was laughing.
He was laughing.
Yeah,
because he appreciated that you were recreating something.
I don't know. I maybe just thought it was funny. I don't know why.
Anybody else that you've imitated in front of them, or their children, their family?
I once imitated Reb David Shussel in front of Shlomo Feivel. He thought it was good.
What did you do?
I can't do Reb David now, but I did Reb David in front of Shlomo Feivel. I did Reb David once on the Urathon, And his kid thought the next day in yeshiva thought it was his father had called in. Yeah.
What do you do? Do a little
Who,
bit.
Rav David?
Yeah, a little bit. Something.
I don't know who watches this.
Everybody.
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 Yeah, so
but I think it's safe to assume that David Shostal's not watching it.
I don't mind that. Rav David, I find that the Yeshivists are not, I think it's important to understand about the Lakewood, so-called Yeshivish or Lakewood crowd. You know, people have like this perception of them as being like very intense and, quick to make machos or whatever, this and that. Only on certain things. On 98% of things, they're very laid back. The more Yeshivish, they're laid back.
Easy.
It's like Mea Sharm, same thing, Mea Sharm, right? A Mea Sharm Yid is in 98% of life completely laid back. Altzigut, Pseider, the 2% that they really care about, you don't want to mess with that. But the other 98%, they're very light. It's as opposed to, let's say, you go a little more, you go away from the yeshivish, you go a little more, other types of orthodoxy where like everything is serious to a certain level. Right. Besides the 2% that the yeshivish are worried about, maybe or something like that.
They really overlap. I got you.
Right, but that, like everything is like.
Let's go to what you mentioned. There are those who said you were instrumental in creating that brand, not just of Fivish, which you are Fivish, right? The voice of Fivish.
I'm the voice of him.
The persona of Fivish. You also were in the early Shmorg videos. There were those at the time who said, I'm going to ask a whole question with two parts.
Okay.
There were those who said I was in Kyle in those years, and people were very against it because they felt like it was introducing an element of visual entertainment to their kids. Till then, you go to from events, they would never say the word video. So it'd be at a pure Chesim Shana, so it'd say audio-visual presentation. They wouldn't use the word video.
Visual.
There will be an audio-visual presentation of Shemitah farmers in Eretz Yisrael, or whatever they were showing. No one thought it had videos in their houses. Again, I'm a little older than you, and those years, there was no such thing as kids being exposed to videos. It's just not a thing that we did and then Uber came and it was kosher. It was like a kosher visual entertainment. There wasn't a lot of options in that field, and it was funny and everything. And even more dangerous, the parents laughed their heads off too. So as a parent, I remember telling my kids, "I'm going to watch it." They're like, "Yeah, really?" And I would be standing at the door the whole time, laughing my head off. That's one side of the argument. Like, you really opened the door that wasn't open before. Not a great one. And then you look at the other argument. You look what happened over the last year, 12 months in particular. When parents had their kids home too much, and anything goes. Just sit quietly. I need to think. And anything was wide open. You say, Baruch Hashem, that there was at least alternatives within the world of film entertainment, that my kids are not seeing worse things. I assume I speak for other parents because I've spoken to other parents about this. So I'm asking a two-part question: blessing, a curse, both. All yours.
I don't really know. I think whenever you have like a shiloh, like as to like introducing something new in Klal Yisrael, you always have to be shaykel risk reward. I think it's been like that at any time something develops, And I'm privileged to work for an organization that they make those decisions. They've taken very seriously.
And I assume that they spoke to Chaimans, to the Gedolim behind it.
And I can't speak for them. I like me personally. Like, I certainly didn't feel like, oh no, I can't be a part of this. It certainly seems fine enough to me.
This is my 2%.
I hear the shiloh. But I'm sure there's people above my pay grade that can make the cut. But I think it's anytime you introduce something new that has a plus and a benefit, and a downside. You have to have people that are gonna, calculate that risk reward, and they did it. I certainly, again, for me, for my kids, it's 100%. It's tremendous. I think it's a great thing. I'm sure there can be someone out there. It was when we put the couch in the Yated. We're introducing, psychology to. I hear this.
The film world and therapy. It's hard for me to believe that there are people who think. Not only I think the film world is forward thinking when it comes to mental health. We've been ahead of the game. That means I Mishpacha magazine every week. Therapists, mental health professionals. You see.
Well, I mean, it's been out there since 1920, but I'm saying.
Yeah, but Mishpacha hasn't. That means we haven't spoken about these things. That people will tell you regularly in regular conversation. Right. Oh, I'm ADHD. Yeah, I'm treating it in normal conversation at Shal Shudas. They wouldn't have done that 15 years ago.
Sure,
there's not even a stigma.
No, certainly there's been a big change. Yeah, certainly there's been a big change. I'm just saying, like, whenever you introduce something that's going to have a broad impact, it's I guess it's. I remember when the Jewish Observer published their first Olav Hashalom published the article on kids at risk. Remember what a big tumult that was? Everybody
1995,
wrote in
yeah,
that
sure.
there's like, it was like finally like, oh my gosh, there's kids that are going
You're
off the
pulling
derech.
back the carpet on
Right. And I'm assuming, and it was nice to have that in those days, that the people went through the Indian and they felt, and there is a risk that like, oh my gosh, now that you're making it a thing, so more kids, you're accepting kids for who they are, so there's a chance that more kids will go left, because they don't feel like they have to stay within the fold as much. It's a big shiloh. Again, my personal opinion, I don't really hear this shiloh so much, but I hear the other side. I know what I would come down, but it's not my call to make. Other people.
You created characters on the Shmorg, on the Urthon, that were devastatingly accurate to anybody who knows the film world. You made that up in your own brain. You made up that Rebbe with his earpiece. And
we did. There's a team at Ura. I don't like that I get all the credit for it. There's a lot of people, that it takes a village to raise a Yeshivish.
An amazing story, Kinderlach. Do you see how truly wonderful and exciting, tremendous and stupendous the koyach of Chesed is?
This der Räuber Ire is mamisch gewaltig what they do. I saw that as immer mit my own eyes. A boy was hat einen Keimer nicht Filmen getrogen, in the Shabbos gehiet, oder Kisch gegessen, and this same day I was calling Ire. They should make a Kira Vlachoikem on him. Yeah, I gave him a donation. True story. I wouldn't baloney you.
Hey, Jeff Miller checking in for the flight to Yerushalayim. I'm always going to Yerushalayim, man. I don't need to check in much, you know what I'm saying? Because I totally travel really light. I just need to check in my guitar. Careful with it. It's really fragile. I mean, it's emotionally, it's just not ready. And by the way, Shlomo Karlbach, OBM, blessed it himself, and there's just 78 other ones in the world, so this is really special.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to eat yet. I mean, what time zone are we in? On one side of the plane is light, and the other is choshech. And how do I daven? My Mashgiach told me that I should daven with a minyan. My Yeshiva holds it's mamish a chilek.
I remember when I was still in Union of former Soviet Republicans, the great Leningrad Godel Rabbi Moshe, Olav Hasholem, used to have teas and cakes for secret Torah class. So if KGB would coming, they would think we are having tea and cake party.
There's a lot of people that are involved, but a lot of the characters.
No one ever said that. It takes a while to trace a Yeshivish. You're coining something new right here.
Hillary Clinton's. That's what she was going for, I think.
For Yeshivish.
No, but there's a whole team.
Do you think Hillary Clinton would get Yeshivish? Do you think she'd find it funny? It doesn't strike me.
There is something, by the way, that I didn't chop till 10 years later about having a bunch of Jewish kids running around with a $5 bill. I'm saying that is just wildly inappropriate for someone who's
into today's culture.
Yeah, I think there was one neo-white website that once picked it up. Thank God it never became
the $5 bill is the celebrated.
It's they're like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of Jewish
kids. These guys are celebrating a tiger. These guys are celebrating a shark, and we're celebrating
a $5 bill
that feeds into the.
Yeah.
Okay, that's today's culture, though. That we talk about these.
I never crossed my mind
because we weren't raised to get so sensitive about everything. We didn't fly off the handle from every innuendo. Also, that was only as long as Trump was president. Everybody.
No, this was before. Trump.
No, I'm saying this thing.
That's hypersensitive.
Right. Oh, that's really because it's a dog whistle. We used to not be that way, and I hope we could continue to go back to the old way. It was a Trump thing that everything is a symbol of something else, and this was really.
No. Could be. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was funny that we kind of didn't hit that.
Did you get any flack? You were imitating a Russian Yid with an accent.
Yeah.
Again, devastatingly well. Did you get any flack?
Not directed at me. I'm sure Uri gets tons of hate mail, but they're very careful. They're very selective about what they forward me.
What they share.
Yeah.
But there's nothing you would do differently. You don't regret any of those characters, impersonations.
I don't know. I have to look at them.
You covered the film world in a certain way, and I recognized all the people from my own life.
I think most people have a sense of humor. I don't think I went at anybody viciously. I didn't
If you were creating new characters today, would you add it anybody in 2021? It's
interesting. We got to see how the dust settles on 2020. I'm sure there's stuff waiting to come. I mean, it's too soon. You know what I mean?
Right.
You could just do the pro-COVIDs, the anti-COVIDs, the pro-Trumpers, the anti-Trumpers. There's characters. I'm just thinking now, the guy who's pro-Trump with the pickup truck. It has an AK-47 and an AR-15. That new kind of guy. he would be probably a good character.
He would be good for it, yeah.
Yeah, and then the
Oh, he's our lady
then
guy. You want to do this?
then the masking guy, right? The guy who's Mr. It's funny. I walked into a store the other day. I was in a restaurant, and I went to next door to buy a bottle of wine, as you can sometimes do. And I walked in. I was like, oh, I forgot my mask in the restaurant or in the car or whatever. And the guy's like, no mask. And I was wearing a coat that covered, and I zipped it up, and it basically went up to here. And he's like, I was like, okay, see? He's like, no, you're not wearing a mask. I said, this is better. This is like a hazmat suit. There's no mask, no service, this and that. So there's something.
Even though in real life you're probably a little tend more to the pro-masking side in general. You weren't thrilled with the overall response within our community.
How do you know that?
Just based on personal conversations I've had with you.
I think it was a very complicated situation. Very complicated situation. As it devolves, there was a whole report last night on like NBC News is covering the fact that basically they were like lining up the California numbers versus the Florida numbers and kind of looking at that, and basically Florida did per capita better than California did. So
I think every film guy saw that. It was like, Florida.
So there's a bahala. There's nothing like that. People, no one really knows what the right thing to do is. I think in general, this is more like, I see this a lot in therapy, and maybe this is the word. I don't know. It's something to think about. That people have a very hard time with nuance and being in the middle of something. People like to go either. Sometimes when people are dealing with catastrophic illness, lahavdil, and the people are often will go either to like a place of like, no, the person's going to do okay, and it's complete hope, and we're not. And then there's also the no, it's over, it's finished. It's very hard to be live in uncertainty and ambiguity, so people kind of tend to pull one way or the other, I think.
That's what you mean by adjustment, adapting to a new reality.
Yeah, living in the middle. Yeah, living in the middle, living with uncertainty. In brain injury, in the recovery of brain injury, you're living with a lot of uncertainty for a long time and a lot of ambiguity. So it's a very kind of it's tough to navigate.
You help in your practice, or at Bina, give people the tools to learn how to
be in the middle. There's a comment. There's a whole idea in psychology called ambiguous loss. Right? It's this idea developed by a lady by the name of Pauline Boss, that there are certain times when people have experienced a loss in their life, which is ambiguous. Dahainu, let's say sometimes the person is physically present, but emotionally not, like in a type of brain injury. The person's not really there, or they're the same way they were, or in dementias, in Alzheimer's or things like that. The person's physically here. There's no Shiva, but they're not really here. The person's there, so it's very ambiguous. Or sometimes missing persons. When I took her training, Pauline Boss, was right when the Malaysia Airlines flight was going on. So that was like another example where there's no closure. I don't like the word. So ambiguous loss. So just kind of introducing people. I find that when I speak to some of the Bina families and we talk, just naming that word, this kind of musik, they're like, oh, they get it as soon as I say it. Ambiguous loss, they chop right away that there's like kind of this ambiguity. And it's very hard because there's no real process. Someone, Rahman al-Itzlan, is nifter, there's a shiva, there's a shleishim, there's a thing. Yeah. I think if you go, not to be too, if you go like, what's the first example of ambiguous loss in the history is Yaakov and Yosef. He was there, but he wasn't there. It's fascinating to kind of connect that if you look at that story and the literature of ambiguous loss and to see how much it correlates. Fascinating.
To Yaakov and Yosef.
Yeah.
So you're saying in some strange way the Frum community itself dealt with this lack of a real clear grasp.
Yeah, that you would think that there could have been like a little bit more of a middle ground.
We talked about 2% and Rosh Yeshiva. Our 2% was probably the kids going to school, Torah. Everybody, every gadol, every rav you mentioned earlier, the heroic job that the Rabbanim have done over the last 12 months. So I think Kehilas, maybe out of town places more with centralized leadership, did a great job in having clarity. So you're saying it came into our 2%.
No, I think there's a difference between opening up yeshivas and opening up shuls and just doing whatever.
But it wasn't clear, like you're saying, it wasn't.
No, but why? Is there not a middle ground somewhere? Where it's between Montreal
and the
where
third day
you have to stay in your study, and just completely
curfew.
open. What?
We have curfew.
You have curfew.
8 o'clock at night, everybody's home.
Right.
The government lets you come out for a drink after bedtime. If you're a tatala, then you could come out. If you're good, and then you're right back to bed. It's stressful.
Maybe it really isn't possible to, like, as a matter of policy, like maybe as a matter of policy, there's no nuance. You either have to choose.
Nuance
I find that in
thing.
general.
I think the viewers just saw in the half an hour that we saw together, the way you jumped around from the world of Hirsch and Yaakov Yosef to imitating Rabbi Beryl Wine to being able. You're all about nuance. That's really you're traveling nuance. In a lot of.
It doesn't require you to take
nuance.
a firm position on anything. That's what it's great. You can pontificate one way or the other. I think there is a difference, and when a policymaker, it's very hard to be nuanced as a policymaker.
And the Rabbanim were essentially policymakers over.
Yes. And politicians. It's similar to, like, it's very hard, like in politics, that it's so polarized nowadays. It's kind of very, you're like, well, why can't you just? Well, maybe you just can't do that. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't work.
It's amazing. We're going to wrap it up. This was tremendous fun.
Oh, yeah. It's
like always talking to you. Could you imitate anybody, even me, or anybody you want, just once before we wrap this up and say goodbye?
I wouldn't imitate Sruli Bessa in front of, who do you want to hear? I mean, we could do.
We're a very talented videographer. Hanani Kramer's father-in-law is Rabbi Krohn.
I can't do Rabbi Krohn.
Really, he would love it.
I know he would. And there's a guy out there. Rabbi Friend, it's never too little. I don't know.
Jacobson.
You got to go old. Like I'm like pre-2000, like Rabbi Victor Miller and those.
Rabbi Victor Miller is the most contemporary voice.
Now he is. Before he wasn't so. Now he's very contemporary. Like him and Reb Gifter, like those.
You're the best. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure sitting with you.
Chazak Baruch.